All right, hey guys, I am super excited to be on the live today. I have a really special guest who's going to be joining us. She goes by the name Carnivore Kimberly, and we connect on so many things. She's been carnivore for a while, so animal-based, but for a lot longer than I have. So she has a bucket of knowledge, but she is also very involved in yoga and also lifts weights. She's a major badass. So she's going to be hopping on in just a few minutes, but until then, just giving you a little update as far as how everything has been going. As you know, I've been mostly animal-based, but this month I've been stepping into just full-on carnivore. So that has been quite a journey, super exciting. I never thought I'd be able to just completely give up sugar and just different cravings, but that was a huge game changer for me. And so it's been really interesting to dive into that whole field. One thing I'm navigating right now is actually just energy regulation, wanting to get in really intense workouts while lifting weights, while doing yoga, but also create a sustainable lifestyle where I can do this while being more animal-based. And what goes hand in hand with animal-based is also eating keto. That just basically means you have no carbs or sugars coming in. So we're really going to dive into that today with Kimberly. She's going to share her experience. I think she's hopping on right now. All right. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Hi. So I was letting everyone know that you'll be hopping on here, and I was just telling them too that I've been animal-based for a while, but this month, the month of August, I'm diving into just full carnivore. So I'm really excited to pick your brain about that. But for everyone tuning in, this is Kimberly. She is based in Texas. We connected on social media, which I'm so grateful for. She is a Primal health coach, which she'll get more into, and she'll also be a certified health coach soon. Is that right?
Well, board certified Primal health coach. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's super exciting. If you want to give a quick intro and also dive into what a Primal health coach entails too.
Sure. So a Primal health coach is someone who helps a client break free from the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which consists a lot of grains, sugars, refined seed oils, even alcohol to some degree, depending on the goals that the person has. And that's where my journey started. And I loved it so much and believed in it so much that I got certified in it because I wanted to help other people break free. And that led me for almost a decade of eating primal, or paleo is kind of like a cousin of it. And then I found carnivore, and I ended up taking the level 2 certification in April. And I will be sitting for my board certification in October. So lots of cool things happening.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I love that. And I think one thing we'll dive into a lot is just the connection of our primal roots and how, that is literally a blueprint for how we can live our life. I always say can be a big dilemma because we live in an information overload with so many different diets of what works, what doesn't, but the answers are right there in front of us, and that is the blueprint. So just looking at what our ancestors did, not in the past 200 years, but before that, something that as a way to navigate, because so many of the rises of different diseases and stuff are only in the past, again, 200 years, when we had an influx of the agriculture and processed foods and, different things other than what we were primally eating. If you can maybe dive into your background also with movement, and whether it's yoga, lifting weights, and what your typical day looks like too.
Sure. So first thing, I wake up and I have my cup of black coffee, or coffee with just a little bit of heavy cream, kind of depending on how I'm feeling that day. And then I will go to the gym. I never eat breakfast ever. Like I'm just not hungry in the morning. I'm really not hungry until probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then it really depends on, and we're kind of getting off topic, but it depends on if I'm doing OMAD, my one meal a day, if I have a certain goal that I'm trying to achieve. But I will go to the gym, and for the longest time, I did CrossFit. I am a former collegiate volleyball athlete and ended up blowing out my knee, gained a big part of the story, and found yoga, which really helped my knee and the healing that I went through with that. And after I healed my knee, I started doing CrossFit, and I fell in love with Olympic lifting. And I loved the intensity of CrossFit. It was really the only thing that I was ever able to do that I stuck with and wanted to do. I mean, besides yoga, that's
Like a
kind of stands alone by itself.
Yeah.
But yoga and CrossFit, the combination, it's almost like a yin and yang. Like you've got to have the super intensity, and then you've also got to have kind of that reel it in, let's slow it down. The yoga that I do and teach is hatha yoga, and we can get more into that later. Where it's a lot of holding the poses and breathing and practicing being in an uncomfortable situation. And CrossFit, the whole thing is uncomfortable. So I think that they both kind of play into each other. But I will go and I've actually pulled back from doing CrossFit because I've done a bunch of research on overtraining and how you can really kind of mess up your endocrine system and your hormones by overtraining. And I was doing CrossFit probably 4 to 5 times a week, just balls to the wall, go, go, go. And when I started concentrating more on the Olympic lifting, I found that I started sleeping a little bit better. I didn't have quite as much just anxiety with it. And so I think that you can almost do too much, regardless of how you're eating. They say too much of a good thing is wonderful, but I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah. I feel you on that a lot. I've loved training pretty much my entire life, and I actually have recently taken some CrossFit classes because I've had a lot of friends in it, but I've also just done, a lot of weightlifting. I love HIIT workouts, and I know that CrossFit is literally, the maximal strength and maximal intensity as well. So just getting both of those. But, when you're in this kind of mode of wanting to lift weights and build muscle, or, maintain lean muscle, and not that everything's about appearance, but even if you are working towards certain goals, and even just the endorphins that the gym gives you, and once you create a habit, it almost becomes like something you need to go towards. But there'd be times where, my training is pretty constant, but then like either I'm feeling like just really fatigued or bloated or something, and I think it was literally, my body just saying like, hey, you need to relax a little bit. And I've also found that eating more animal-based or carnivore has been really amazing in that, like, you don't have to put so much work in. I came from like a more vegan, plant-based background, and I just felt like I was just trying to like burn so much, and I was just like constant state of inflammation. So this has been a big game changer. You can share a little bit about just like your transition, like how you found this lifestyle, like maybe how you ate before and how this changed your life.
Sure. So I came from the SAD diet, where growing up, my mom cooked. Almost every meal was home cooked, and to her credit, she did a really great job with that. It was always, there was a focus on protein, and then like eat your vegetables, and then there might have been a carb on the side, like a potato or a sweet potato or some kind of vegetable, or corn, which is not a vegetable, but and so when I then went to college, it was kind of like, I'm an adult and I can eat whatever I want. And if I want to go to the store and buy um, binge eating is also, did we lose each other?
I can still hear you,
Okay,
but
there we go.
yeah.
You're back. Yeah. Um, Binge eating is also a part of my past. And when I moved away from home, I straight up wasn't ready for it. And
Yeah.
then when I injured myself, I went through this kind of depression where
Yeah.
I would just sit around and eat. And it was like I was trying to fill this void inside of me.
Yeah.
And especially since I was injured, I couldn't work out anymore. And I went off the deep end with my food. I would eat pizza, dip it in ranch. I would eat pasta literally with ranch on it. I love ranch dressing. It's bad. But just carbs and gallons of Bluebell ice cream. If anyone from Texas is listening to this, you know about Bluebell ice cream. And I gained a lot of weight. I got up to just about 260 pounds. I was a size 18 going into a size 20. My last meal was a Big Mac, a double quarter pounder with cheese, the supersized fries that go with it, a supersized chocolate shake, and a large Diet Coke. Because watching calories, I don't want to get crazy with it. And I remember I ate every single bite of it. And I sat there and I had these wrappers, and like the little crinkly papers sitting all over the bed with me. And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die. I'm going to kill myself. And it was in that moment that I realized that something had to change. And so I started to go on this journey of trying to figure out how to lose weight, how to get healthy, how to reel this in. And it's been a lot of, start, stumble, and fall, quite frankly. And at the time, this was in 2006. I don't really even think that Mark Sisson had started doing his Primal Blueprint stuff like that. That came so much later, and it was all about calories in, calories out, move more, eat less, whole wheat instead of white bread, and those things just they didn't work. They didn't work for me. They might work for some people, but they didn't work for me because I was still eating the same foods and having the same cravings and having the same relapses, quite frankly, with the binging. And I did lose a little bit of weight, but it would be like I would lose 20 pounds and gain 15 back, and then lose another 20 and then gain 10, and then lose. And so there was this yo-yo dieting, which I think from what I've read is almost worse for you metabolically than just staying the same weight. Obviously, being overweight is not healthy in and of itself, but to yo-yo like that, it's really hard on the body.
And your hormones too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They say that, well, it's calories in, calories out, but the way that they determined originally the whole calorie thing, it's the amount of heat required to burn 1 gram of whatever the food is. We're not furnaces. We are biologically functioning metabolic creatures that when you eat something, you don't burn food. There's no fire. I mean, metaphorically, maybe, but there's no like little flame inside of you that's burning food. You digest food. And then that starts a whole hormonal cascade that will either serve you or not serve you. And so that's what I had to learn going through this whole process because my mom's a calorie counter. And like I said, it did not work for me. I starved myself. I ran myself ragged on the treadmill. I tried to lift weights. I got a personal trainer. I went to the doctor to ask about like diet pills. Like, is there something wrong with me? I got to the point where I was considering, is it bariatric? It's bariatric surgery where you have the lap band or whatever
Shrink
because
your stomach. Yeah.
exactly. And I was just about at my wit's end. And then a friend of mine who introduced me to CrossFit also introduced me to Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint. And I think I spent a week reading every single article that he had ever written, starting with the one called Why Are Grains Bad for You? The definitive guide to why grains are bad for you. And it was like, as I was going through this and reading about the impact that certain foods have on your body, it was like light bulbs started going off. And I'm going, this is why I feel this way. This is why I can't control my eating. And it just started to put everything into place for me, like the food pyramid where they recommend that you eat 6 to 11 servings of grains a day. And like, you know, at the top you've got fats and sugars combined. And it's like, these things are not like the other. Yeah. And it just started this like catalyst for me of this passion that developed to get off of this, get my body in alignment using food, which is like the most powerful medicine that we have, and help other people to see what I have seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all so powerful, and I appreciate you being so open with that. I mean, I would have never guessed, like looking at you now and just how you are, like that you were ever there. So that is absolutely insane. And it just goes to show. So for me, I'm really grateful. I grew up in a household where my mom was cooking all the time, and it was, you know, healthy foods for the most part. But I think maybe perhaps my parents came from more like a scarcity mindset. So we were just always taught, like, you have to finish all of your food. So I had no sense of, you know, what being full or satiety even meant. And it was definitely like higher carb food, and I never really liked rice or grains. When I was plant-based, I almost like felt like I was forcing myself to, just because they said like this is what's healthy in a whole food plant-based diet.
You gotta have the beans and the rice because it makes a complete protein and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, like a lot of people don't realize, like grains and legumes, they were kind of like input into our society after like the agricultural revolution, and we commercialized so much, but we're so far from, you know, like what, again, like what we were actually meant to eat. And with that, I feel I've just been struggling with like binge eating for so long, and I almost normalized it, and I was like, all right, this is something I just got to deal with, because the binging is, I think a lot of people experience it, and it's in different ways, but I think we forget that like we do have an animal part of our brain that works in kind of like a survival instinct. Like there's a reason why we see food and we want to eat a bunch of it, but it's because we didn't used to live in so much abundance. Like now we can get anything delivered to our door, but before we didn't know, you know, when the next time we'd see food was. However, I didn't realize, because after going more animal based, I'm feeling so much satiation, and so many of these cravings and like urges to binge pretty much gone. And I was like, is this even possible? Like I was just so like fascinated, because I legit was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to be at peace with the fact that I always have this issue with myself. And I was like hoping and dreaming, like, why can't I just like control myself like other people?
There must be something wrong with me.
Right. And I was probably, you know, I've always loved fasting as a practice. And I've also loved training, but I think that helped a lot to keep inflammation down when I was doing these things or eating plant-based. But now going animal-based, I feel like it was just a whole, like, that was the missing puzzle piece, and realizing like this all just works together, your metabolism, just all of that. I'd love to get into like how that transition was for you. So when you got introduced to that, when you started eating this way, like how quick did you start seeing changes, and like at what point were you like, this is for me, I need to stick to this?
On the primal side of it, I didn't really notice too much besides the weight loss. I went from 260 to about 185 over the course of a couple of years, and then kind of maintained. And I would be able to get down to 175, and then Thanksgiving would roll around and I would get back up to 180, 190, and then it would come back down. And so I still had this kind of, as you say, these cravings, these, the binging was still there. Like I could eat an entire tub of sweet potatoes and butter and like it was nothing. And I would feel awful afterwards. And it's one of those things that didn't really serve me, but I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, well, at least I'm not binging on cake, so it's kind of
Yeah.
the lesser of all the evils, but it's still not great. But then I started doing CrossFit, still didn't really see a lot of change in terms of like body composition. I did get stronger, but I was still in that like 185, and I'm 6 feet tall, by the way. So
Oh,
whenever I say
wow.
185,
Yeah.
it's a slightly different 185 from someone who's maybe like 5'5".
Yeah.
But my body fat was still too high. I still had the roll around the middle, but I was like, I just know that someday I'm going to figure this out. This is going to kick in. This is going to work. My sausage arms will not be sausage arms forever. Um, but then I found Carnivore November 2018. It was the day before Thanksgiving. And I came across an article by Kevin Stock called The Dangers of a Plant-Based Diet. And in that article, he outlines every single different type of vegetable and what it does to you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't refute or argue anything that he said. And I knew that there's a quote by Musashi that the truth is what it is, and you can either bend to it or you're going to live a lie. And I literally went cold turkey carnivore, completely stopped eating vegetables. I don't eat vegetables. I don't eat fruit. And I mean, I've had in the last almost 3 years, maybe 2 salads, and it makes me feel like garbage every single time. I bloat, I break out. I feel like I handle it a little bit better now because I had eczema. I had some, little nagging, not full-blown autoimmune disorders, but things that can be attributed to leaky gut.
Yeah.
And the transition to carnivore was really intense. My husband and I both did it. And I'll never forget, and I've told this story a lot, but the first 3 weeks, he had one experience and I completely had a different experience. Every day at 5:58 p.m. on the dot, he would start a fight with me. And he would accuse me of trying to kill him, of this is insane. I can't believe that we were trying to do this. And that went on probably for about, 2 weeks of trying to get through this. But then after that, starting on about the 3rd week, I started to get headaches, really, really bad headaches, and they would last. And I don't mean like migraine headaches, but like these nagging little kind of tension headaches that wouldn't go away, that I could tell was because my body was flipping into a different state. And I went through the low carb flu when I did Primal, and I got some headaches and all that stuff, but this was completely different. I went from a fat adapted state to ketosis. And it wasn't even like the keto flu, because even I know people who have been in ketosis go carnivore, and as soon as you remove that fiber from your system, it does something to you. And I don't know the mechanism or how to describe it, but headaches, fatigue, brain fog, I could hardly think. I would be riding in the car, 5 o'clock would come around, and I would go, and I couldn't stop it. And the workouts because I did CrossFit all through the transition, and I've heard it both ways, that you should do CrossFit or any kind of workout, whatever, don't change what you're doing. But I would get halfway through a workout, and it didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter if it was, 5 rounds for time, or we're doing like a 3-minute sprint workout. I would have to stop, take all of the weight off of my bar just to finish and get through the workout. And then I was done. It was like I reached a point where the tank was empty. There was not a fume in it. And then one day, it was like a switch flipped. And I had boundless energy, effort. It almost sounds like a fairy tale. It's like, how on earth could this be true? But I guess I finally got either deep enough into ketosis or tapped into some kind of my own fat stores or something. But it changed. Everything changed. And then I started putting on more muscle. My body composition started changing, and I'll never go back. I'll never go back.
Wow. That's so interesting that you're sharing all of that as far as the transition, because I go really split, and I've asked a bunch of people who still do the fitness and the carnivore thing, and I'm like, so like, do you still do the really intense stuff? And I've had some people say like, I just took it really easy, like I just did way less weight. Hmm.
There
I
you
think
are.
you're
I
back.
lost you for a
Okay.
second.
Okay. Cool. You're back. Okay. I was saying, yeah, so just like transition wise, I think I'm almost close to experiencing that right now, because when I was doing the animal based and still having some fruit here and there, or like a few, like what they say, non-toxic veggies like zucchini or cucumber, things like that. So some fiber, definitely some carbs. Like if you're familiar with Paul Saladino, I was kind of following what
Hmm.
he suggests, even with the honey. And then I was still doing coffee though. And then I was like, all right, I really want to get deep into it. And it was almost as if like I used to love and be obsessed with avocados, but it was almost as if like my body was just like, you
Hmm.
don't need them anymore. And we literally had them in the fridge and we're just like not eating them. So my body was almost just taking me towards being fully carnivore.
Hmm.
And then like that full commitment to it starting just, like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. But the main thing for me really in that sense was just like fully committing to like no carbs really, because
Yeah.
any like honey or even like dried fruit, that was really like the last thing. And those were what kind of like stimulated any binge tendencies, because it's really hard to like binge on meat and fat, but when you have
Yeah.
something sweet, it's like you could
Yeah.
just have like a bucket of it, even if it's like filling or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say, the energy that I wanted like in the gym is not the most optimal, and
Hmm.
I'm playing around with like fasting, like as much as I love fasting, like is this something that I should be like doing more intense fast, or like eating
Hmm.
before the workout? And then also certain times where I'm just like I kind of coast through the day, but then all of a sudden I'll just be like like I'm so tired, or like
Hmm.
certain times. So is this something where like you were like, for just talking from own experiences, like you just kind of like rode the wave and then it eventually changed for you?
Yes. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was just a matter of kind of waiting it out
Yeah.
and honoring myself in terms of, if I'm not feeling this, I'm not going to force myself to continue with 65 pounds on the bar for the sake of my ego, because I know that I can. And maybe you can. I didn't. And I would still do the movement, but I would do body weight basically, or
Yeah.
the women's Olympic bar is 35 pounds. Um, and it was, I had moments of doubt whenever I first started. I was like, is this ever going to change? And I don't think that there's any way to know definitively yes or no. And I think that, like a lot of people who start carnivore, and Kevin Stock wrote an amazing article called Fat Loss in the Carnivore Diet, where he talks about the two different types of people who come to the carnivore diet. You have one type who comes from severe restriction. Like, I want to lose weight, so I've been calorie counting or macro
Mm-hmm.
counting, and not giving my body the nutrition it needs. And when they start carnivore and they give their body access to this super bioavailable nutrition, it's like their body just vacuums it up, and you get weight gain. I know that Kelly Hogan gained 20 pounds in the beginning. I also gained weight in the beginning. And then something changes, and it's different for everyone, and then it starts to fall off. I have read, and I've wondered about this before, that excess body fat could actually be a symptom of autoimmune disease. That you've got this inflammation, that you've got this hormonal imbalance that will not allow your body to release the excess fat. But then on the flip side, you have someone who has done nothing but eat, and so they come to carnivore for fat loss, and then as soon as they start it, it's like their body goes, oh, and they release all of their excess body fat. You hear about these amazing stories of hundreds of pounds lost using carnivore. And then you hear the other side where someone starts carnivore, starts gaining, and then they stop carnivore because they're like, well, that wasn't my goal. And it's kind of like, well, you might have to take 10 steps back to sprint forward. And, there is no way to know how it will affect you. And that's one thing that anyone who ever comes to me looking for coaching or just, advice on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, they're like, this is happening to me. Why? I'm going, I don't know. There's no way to know, because we all come from a different path. We have all tried different things to try and figure this out. And it's just, you've got to trust the process. You have to eat your fatty meat. You have to eat enough. And I especially see people who come to carnivore and they still restrict what they're eating. They're eating 800 to 1,000 calories a day, trying to do protein-sparing modified fasts and things like that. And I get it, and I believe that there's absolutely a place for that kind of eating, but you have to eat enough. Because if you go into that starvation mode, that's not good. And then you start to get into ketoacidosis, and your hair is falling out, and your eyebrows are getting thin, and it's, so there's a fine line between doing carnivore perfectly and doing it perfectly wrong.
Yeah.
Don't at me.
No, but everything you said was so on point. Like, first and foremost, obviously everyone's different, so you just can't ever, there's no like, this is exactly what's going to happen once you go through the process. And based on how, fat adapted someone was before and just going through that process, or if they were in ketosis, or if they still need to get into it. And, it can take anywhere from like 6 weeks to 8 weeks, even longer, depending on where someone's coming from. And then like the hormonal balance is super huge too. Like what you mentioned as far as people needing to, like, what happens with the weight. Like, that's very interesting that you brought up that some people actually gain weight at the beginning, but then everything normalizes, versus some people, it falls off right away. So that's super interesting. Yeah.
And I feel like people want to, like, especially in America, we have this concept of, I want it now and I wanted it yesterday. And you hear people all the time say, well, you didn't get healthy, you didn't gain this weight, or you didn't get unhealthy, you didn't gain this weight overnight, and you're not going to lose it overnight. And they want to tinker with the carnivore diet before their body has had a chance to heal. And I know that Kevin Stock, he was kind of my guru. When I first started, I hadn't found Sean Baker yet, but Kevin Stock has a lot of great articles on his meat.health website. And he talks about tinkering before you should really start tinkering, because you've got to get to a place where you can maintain this metabolic health before you start reducing the fat, before you start increasing the protein, before you start trying to tackle maybe some other goals. It's like, I'm also a CrossFit coach, but in the certification for CrossFit, we talk about the spectrum. You go from unhealthy, and then people literally get off the couch and go to the gym And I think it's something like 70% of people who get off the couch and go to the gym fail, because you can't go from unhealthy to fitness. There's a spectrum in the middle where you have to tackle your wellness before your body will respond in the way that you want it to when you apply pressure in the terms of weights or running or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's such a good point. You're so right. And I think, yeah, coming back to that mindset, like people want it now instead of realizing like there's a whole process. And if you spent years of your life being unhealthy, like you can't become healthy or like a fitness, like, expert or get like your results that you've wanted for so long in just a matter of like a few weeks or a month. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take that much time to like, undo, unlearn, like regulate
Yeah.
the hormones, which is the base of so much. So that's such
Mm-hmm.
a really good point and eye opener. Um, Two other points we're just wanting to touch on. So I know fasting is like a huge practice for you. So I'm curious like how that practice has evolved for you. What do you usually do on the day to day? And then also like how it intertwines with your movement practice.
Sure. Like I said, I don't eat breakfast. So even whenever I was on a SAD diet, I was not hungry in the morning. But I didn't know that there was a name for it, which is the intermittent fasting, where you
Right.
either do like, and I'm dysgraphic, so the numbers I get switched up, but I think it's either the 18-6 or the 6-18, where you have a
Mm-hmm.
very restricted eating window. And I've always heard that it's terrible for you to eat within 3 hours of going to bed.
Right.
So especially whenever I first started carnivore, it was like, you don't have to eat breakfast. And I was like, you mean I have permission to do what my body has been trying to tell me to do for my
Yeah.
entire life? Okay. So it was like this, going into this restriction, it was like restriction was lifting off of me. And I embraced the eating window of like 1 or 2 p.m. I would have some eggs, and then at 7 p.m. I would have a steak. And yes, SAD equals the standard American diet. Yes, I see questions down here, and I think someone had a question about avocado. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But the when I started doing carnivore, and like you were talking about earlier, the satiety that comes with it from eating protein and fat without carbs, because carbs mess with your ghrelin and your leptin and your hunger responses and everything.
Yeah.
I found that I naturally would want to eat more in a sitting and then not eat for the rest of the day. And so I
Yeah.
started doing 2 MOD, the 2 meals a day. And gradually that kind of turned into OMAD, the 1 meal a day. And that's what I've been doing now for probably a little over 2 months. And it
Mm-hmm.
just sits well with me. I don't find that I have to struggle or fight to get to that, like designated 5 p.m. whenever I sit down to eat my pound of ribeye, my 3 ounces of goat cheese. But then at the same time, there are days where I wake up and I'm hungrier, especially doing the Olympic lifting. I might get hungry at 2 o'clock. Well, I'll eat. It's like I'm not here to shove myself into some arbitrary box where I can't do this and can't do that, because that goes back to that restriction mindset. And I prefer abundance, because that puts you into a completely different, like you have more space to be grateful and have these full experiences where I can sit here and eat exactly what I need to eat and eat as much as I need to feel okay, and then I'm fine for the rest of the day. And I don't really have the cravings anymore. I mean, every once in a while I do, especially because, as I'm sure you know, women, we go through cycles where we might have a craving every now and again, but I find that cravings pass in about 2 minutes. And if you just sit with it in that kind of uncomfortable state, it's like having an old friend over for tea. You just kind of sit with them. and you don't let them burn your house down.
That's so true. Yeah, you're that all of this is making so much sense and is definitely so interesting to reflect on and also just see your process with that. I'm really big on abundance mindset and also
Mhm.
just because we have to respect the fact that our animal part of our brain is like wanting to be in scarcity mindset and survival mode, but
Yeah,
we can actually create habits and actually like take advantage of neuroplasticity and
mhm.
create like a safe space with our human part of our brain and also practice being in that abundance mindset. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure, this is referenced in the Primal Blueprint and just, the whole idea of primal living, but we are so quick to act on like dopamine, but that's just based on our
Oh yeah,
survival instincts, right? So
yeah,
everything related to like food and sex, people are going to be like, wait, like
yeah.
whatever are the quick responses. But when we can actually like tell ourselves like we're in a safe space and like we don't act on those things, then the habit doesn't like become created to act on the impulse, which I think is what true empowerment is. It's what it feels like to have true like alleviation from restriction,
Hmm.
like finding that freedom through the discipline, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so final thing I wanted to touch on because I know you're a yogi as well and you even have a business in yoga, but I know, people have brought up like ahimsa, people have brought up like,
Mhm.
this is causing suffering or this is not in, the philosophy of yoga, but how would you like, navigate that conversation and what would you say is like kind of your ethical standpoint as far as eating, animals?
Sure. So, ahimsa for our non-yogi attendants in here is the absolute definition of the word is nonviolence. And yoga itself stems from the Hindu religion. And most Indians today are lacto-ovo vegetarians. I think I'm saying that correct. So because there's such a Hindu influence in India, they eat eggs and drink milk. And the cow is considered a sacred animal to them. So beef is like off the table.
Yeah.
But for someone who is not Hindu, like the whole thing about yoga and amongst the yoga community, I may end up getting canceled for this, but yoga itself is not some sacred, unbroken lineage passed down through 5,000 years of yoga gurus and everything. If you look at Patanjali's sutras, the Yoga Sutras, he describes the journey of God. I mean, where do you even start with this? Um, you start with pranayama, which is the breathing. Then you move on to the dharana, which is the mindset. And then you get into the asanas, which are the actual postures of yoga. So when you say, oh, yeah, I do yoga, yeah, if you're breathing, you're doing yoga. So you don't there are so many different levels and nuances, and especially because, like I mentioned before, it's not some sacred, unbroken, 900 posture practice passed down through the sages. What we know today as modern yoga is a combination of Danish gymnastics and the original seated postures which were used for breathing and meditation. And it was Krishna, and I actually have a whole bunch of notes here that I wrote because I knew that we were going to talk about this. So Krishnamacharya in the 1930s, and I actually have a book because I'm really passionate about this.
Oh
I don't
my
know if
gosh, this is
you can read
amazing.
that Fundamentals of Danish Gymnastics for Women, and
Wow.
you'll see right here that's Uttanasana, And that right there is Paschimottanasana right there.
Yeah.
So the yoga that we know today, like if you go to India, you're not going to find a yoga class. They don't teach the asanas. Like you go to, a hot yoga studio here of the Bikram lineage, and you're going to go through the 27 postures of Bikram yoga, and that's not, it's fine. The whole thing is fine. But as far as ahimsa and eating meat, in Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga, the man himself, who is arguably the father of modern yoga, when you go to a yoga studio and you use props and you use the bolsters and the blocks and everything to help you get deeper into the poses, that's Iyengar. And he was taught, if I'm saying this correctly, he was taught by Krishnamacharya. And in this book, when he talks about ahimsa, he says it's in black and white, ahimsa is not a diet. It's not a diet. Ahimsa is a mindset. It is a state of being, because if you go vegan and you are starving yourself of nutrients, you're doing harm to yourself. You're doing violence to yourself. And I wish it weren't that way, because the concept of veganism, where you eat something that, yes, plants have to die, but it's, arguably not the same thing as slaughtering a cow. I hear that, but at the same time, and we can argue about the tenets of veganism all day, where millions of animals still have to die for your soy latte and all of that. But harm will be done somewhere. Harm will be done somewhere. And it's terrible that suffering is a part of life. But if you approach it with understanding that something had to die to help you live, there's a deeper level of gratitude, I think, that you can have, where a life was given for your life. To say nothing of the fact that one cow can feed an entire family for a year, and monocropping and the destruction of the topsoil with everything, you can go into 1,000 different rabbit holes with it. But I just think that at the end of the day, we all have to do what's best for us and do as little harm as we can possibly do, exercise immense gratitude for this life that we've been given, and understand that our job is to ameliorate suffering where we can. There's a little Jordan Peterson for you. And you can try to do so much good that it becomes misguided and ultimately ends up harming yourself, which I don't think is the heart of ahimsa either. So we all have to make our own decisions. We all have to face whatever it is at the end of all of this. And I hope that whether, someone is vegan or following the standard American diet or carnivore, that we can all go to whoever or whatever that is that we believe in and say, hey, I did my best. I tried.
Yeah, that's I resonate with that a lot, because I think for so long, I was doing the plant-based thing, but it was more out of like guilt. And I was like, oh my gosh, like if so much of the world's eating meat, like I need to not have eat meat, and the sustainability and the environment. And that was before I learned the wonders of regenerative farming and
Yeah.
agriculture. So for those
Yes.
who are wanting to really make a solution for the environment and your own health and save more animals, actually regenerative farming and getting your food, your animal meats from regenerative farm is going to do wonders. But
Absolutely.
besides that,
That's
I was
100%.
yeah, but I was carrying so much guilt. And then I'm just of the mentality, your own inner healing is what is the most important for collective healing. But if you are, again, causing your own suffering or depriving yourself of certain things, then you're just going to be in lack, and then you're putting your own lack, and scarcity into the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So I think that entire process of like being as connected as you can, and for those who are looking for, like ethical options or like, how do I go about this? Obviously, like finding a local farmer and going that route is always going to be best. If you look up, regenerative farms where you can actually order, get it delivered, that's an amazing
Mm-hmm.
option where it can be really sustainable and, not just sustainable, but regenerative is the key word, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not like, how can I maintain this for life? It's like, how can I literally regenerate the earth and, basically like create the earth and restore it to what it was before monocrop agriculture and before the topsoil was pretty
Mm-hmm.
damaged.
Yeah.
And just to touch on for those who are kind of like thinking, if I'm not eating meat, I'm not causing any harm. But like you said, there's always going to be harm. Thousands of animals died through monocrop agriculture.
Yeah.
So just, I think no matter what, there's going to be pros and cons, but doing what's right for you and then finding the best way to do that and making
Mm-hmm.
that, whether it's affordable to you, making it fun, looking forward to every meal, feeling fully satiated and not feeling like you have those cravings or, with the weight or feeling like different addiction and hormones are going to be huge. Like that's really kind of a compass for us. But if those are skewed, it's really hard to navigate everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to kind of close off if you have any, tips or suggestions for those just like interested, but maybe haven't made the leap. I know like just trusting the process was a big one, which I'm so happy you shared because I definitely needed to hear that. But anything else that you'd like to share that kind of helped you along your journey?
It's going to be bumpy. It'll be bumpy in the beginning. A lot of it is you don't know what you don't know. And all I can say is just start. You'll never be ready. You can nitpick and research something to death. Um, just give it a try. I mean, that was kind of the mindset that my husband and I had whenever we started this is, what do we have to lose? Because we can try this for a month, and at any time we can add vegetables back into our diet if we think that we need it, and we still feel that way. We're not so dogmatic about, this is the answer, that if something changed, we would change. And I think that, you can also get so caught up in doing it perfectly that you end up doing it perfectly wrong. And you just got to try it. You got to try it because you'll find what works for you. Like you were saying that you started one way and your body kind of guided you into this other way of eating that you didn't really expect. And it was the same for me doing 2MOD, and then all of a sudden I'm doing OMAD, and I'm not forcing it. It's just what feels right for me and my body. And you develop this type of intuition that you start to hear, and it's the strangest thing when we remove all of this excess stuff that's clouding our intuition. Whether you want to call it your body's talking to you or God's talking to you or whatever, if we quiet that down and hear it, it will guide us to a good place. And that's just kind of the journey that we're on, and you got to trust it, and that's tough. It can be really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so, so much. That was so much amazing, just knowledge and wisdom and experience that you shared. This was absolutely so fun. I think there's so many other topics that I want to just dive deeper in with you. So I hope this isn't the last time, but I thank you so much for your time and
Of
for
course.
sharing your journey.
Yeah, well, we've got to get the message out there, and it all begins with us. So let's go.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys all, whoever tuned in, who are watching this later. If you guys want to connect with Kimberly and reach out to her, maybe even get coached. Her handles are all here. And I hope you're all having an amazing rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye. Thank
Kimberly.
you. Bye, y'all.